your attention up front, and I'll hand it off to Dr. Shirl Donaldson in a minute. Just first a little background. So Dr. Donaldson, right? She's one of our founding faculty members in the College of Innovation and Technology. Although this is the first time that we're going to finally get to hear some research talk. So I've been looking forward to this for a while. But a little bit about the background. So Dr. Donaldson, Shirl came from. Works as a partner in a family-owned manufacturing firm and resulting in exceptional insight into entrepreneurship, manufacturing, operations management, project management, quality systems, technology management, and STEM education, and returned to Purdue University in 2009 to pursue a PhD in industrial technology. She held positions with technical and financial responsibilities and brings these skills and experiences to every space she enters as she continues to teach and consult. In August 2021, Dr. Donaldson joined the College of Innovation and Technology as the inaugural faculty member, and previously Shirl taught operations management, project management, supply chain, and quality systems at the University of Texas and Purdue University. Problem solving is Shirl's passion. She's a certified project management professional, PMP, and an active member of Project Management International, PMI. Current research agenda is highlighted several community engaged projects, such as modifying vehicles for handicapped children from a student perspective, racial equity in STEM education and Donk racing, which we'll be hearing about, motorsports and applied STEM, leveraging project management for student success. With that, let's thank Shirl for giving us.
Well, thank you, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for being here on a Friday afternoon on a beautiful day. So I'll try to go quickly. But I appreciate you being here. And as James mentioned, academia is my second career. My first career was in manufacturing. I spent a couple decades in job shops making gear and transmission parts. So this project was kind of near and dear to my heart when I finally found it. But I want to share how it started, what happened, where it's going. And I'm open to questions and suggestions as we go forward. So we'll go through, this is my outline for today. We'll go through the genesis of the study, how I got the idea, what my rationale was, talk to you a little bit about Donks, because most people don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't know what I was talking about until 2022, so we'll learn together. And then some of the potential impacts, things that have happened already, things I see in the pipeline, and other outcomes from this line of inquiry and my plans for the future. So a good thing came out of COVID. You know, there's always a yin and a yang, a good and a bad. So unfortunately, I caught COVID beginning of the second semester as we launched the college. So I had to stay in the house. And like most people, what do? You binge watch TV, you eat. I actually gained weight during quarantine. So, but I was watching TV. I normally watch the financial shows. My partner's retired mechanic. He watches all the car shows. So this show called Donk Master came on. I'm like, what is this? And I'm seeing these people with these cars and I'm like, oh, I've seen those. I'm a Detroit girl. I've seen every kind of car you can think of, right? And then he's like, wait, they're getting ready to race. I said, they're not going to race that car. I said, that's not what race cars look like. Because I went to Purdue and I'm used to going to the Indy 500. So this was not my vision of a race car. So that piqued my curiosity. So it's a low budget reality show on Vice TV. So it's kind of rough around the edges. And the show actually started in 2018, but in 2022, it was new to me. And so it grabbed my attention, so I kept watching. So this is the actual trailer from the show. And this is what I saw. And I want you guys, it's a little bit, you know, it's not really scholarly, but it has some importance. So I want you to think, listen to it, watch it, and tell me what you see.
You know what's smart? Treating yourself without cheating your goals.
Not
Smart with Factor.
What's my job? Man, I gotta put kids in college shit. American classics with big flashy lips, works of art, built for speed.
Their turbo was so big that he had to take the headlight out to make sure that he get a look.
No, I said, dude, I want to take it down. You got rims on your car. And one down 4 miles an hour is speed, so anything can happen in life.
So that's what I saw. I don't know about you guys, but I heard something interesting. Two things. One, now this was recorded in 2018. He said, I got kids to send to college. And then when the young man said that turbo is so big, we had to take out the light so the turbo could get enough air. I said, well, now he obviously understands something about science. He may not be a chemist, he may not look like a science, but there's something going on here. Some things are understood, even though they're displayed in a different way, discussed in a different way, and definitely in a unique setting. So this will fall under what we call informal learning. Because upon exploration, I got to meet a lot of the people involved in this racing sector and ask them how they developed their expertise. So a little bit more of the background. Donk racing is sanctioned by the National Drag Racing Association. Previously, people saw it as just illegal street racing, but because of the Donk Masters activity with the association and some other professionals, it is now seen as a legitimate sector of racing. It was also interesting to me to see the crowd. This was my first time really seeing a crowd of people that looked that much like me at a racing event, and also looked like the racers, the participants, the mechanics. So I thought this could be an entree into a community that's often overlooked or underserved, especially when we think about STEM education or how we can attract them, how we can engage them. And so it gave a practical demonstration of STEM. I mean, you definitely saw applied technology, applied engineering. But my question was, do the people that are watching, do the fans realize that this is what they're seeing? We enjoyed the sport, but do we realize that you could not race without math or science? And do the young people realize that, or their parents? So in this journey, I decided I wanted to learn more about it. So when I finally got out of quarantine, I wrote a concept paper, white page, and I went and talked to Ken over in research. And Ken said, I said, Ken, I know I'm gonna sound crazy, but he said, you do sound crazy, but you should pursue it. So they might be interested. So I wrote a RCA grant and got money to go. And so I literally went to racetracks for 2 years, collecting data at the track, and I surveyed participants. I had some interviews with some of the drivers and the mechanics too, but this research took a lot of time. I had to build relationships in the community. I had to travel. There was times I got rained out. So it was expensive. It took a lot of time, but I think what we garnered is worth the investment. And so again, and the Donk Master, Sage Thomas, is self-taught. He's a self-taught. I asked him, where'd you develop these skills? He learned from his uncle. So now we're learning more about informal STEM, peer mentoring, and also engagement within the community. So strictly speaking, Donks are considered big wheels that race on drag strips. They're typically your classic GM G-body cars from 71 to 76 with wheels of 26 inches or more. They often call high risers. And when you go to these events, there's strong urban influence. So I also thought about it from a project management perspective. Anytime you host an event like that, there are several factors. So you have not only the car, STEM, you have manufacturing, you have event planning, you have merchandising. I'm seeing a lot of different things happening here. So again, this is an example of what a Donk is. Sage Thomas built both of these. Now what's really interesting is this car looks like your classic 73 Caprice. But what he has done is replaced all of the lead with fiberglass, and you can't tell. And what does that do? That gets rid of the weight so he can go faster. So he obviously understands physics, aerodynamics. If you talk to him, he may not use that language, but it's clear that these concepts are understood. And when you look at the vehicles, they are a work of art. This is him. He actually brought this car, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This car has over 1,200 horsepower under the hood. And so this is evolving along with everything else. So he has built all these in different colors. He built for a lot of the pro athletes, which are also influencers who the young people look up to, but they like these cars and they're getting involved in racing. I've also learned that racing is one of those areas where you could see people all different ages come together and have that shared interest. This is one of the newer ones, and what's interesting about this is that it's an old vehicle, but it's got a lot of new technology under the hood and with all the amenities, with the way it moves, the doors, the sound systems, a lot of things going on. So they're blending old and new, and it's evolving as well. So there's also cultural relevance here. And when we think about community engaged research, cultural relevance is important. So when young people can go somewhere and not be the only one there, be part of the dominant population, it gives them a greater sense of belonging. If you can find role models that look like you and role models that look like the fan base. The other thing too is donk racing, because of the setting and the way these events are presented, is accessible and affordable, and I'll show you some data on that later. From a business perspective, there's a lower cost of entry for the drivers, the mechanics, and the promoters when we think about the business model of donk racing versus IndyCar or Formula One. And with this, there's potential for social mobility for the participants if they understand it and they do well. So again, through the work the Donk Master did with NDRA, he just made street racing legitimate. Some of the major cities like Detroit and Indianapolis are trying to use this to get kids to stop drag racing in the streets. We don't know if it'll ever happen, but go to some of the sanctioned events where they can do it safer and be able to do it without endangering other people. But also, this movement has caused growth in the related industries too. So along with this, I have another presentation that I do from an entrepreneurial perspective and the impact that this type of racing is having on specialized manufacturing, customization, and certain types of products. So there's a lot to see here. So when they say, why would a college professor study donk racing? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. So there's a few of them. So I got to meet him and start building rapport. So you might say, okay, well, somebody's in the chat just a second here. Okay, no taking no worries. Because I spend so much time with the students and he is significantly younger than me, the way to get to him was Instagram. So I got in his DMs, his direct messages, and stalked him because we know nobody answers our emails. So finally, he put me together with his business manager and sat down for an interview at one of the races. And when I talked to him, I asked him about what his favorite subjects were. He said when he was in school, he always liked science and he really wanted to be a veterinarian. Who would have known? But he got into cars because of his uncle Buggy, he called him, and his mother couldn't afford to buy him a car. So he went to the junkyard and got pieces and parts to start putting them together. So he became a builder or manufacturer out of necessity. There's a certain body of knowledge in entrepreneurship about folks that become entrepreneurs out of necessity as well. So that's another line of inquiry. When I told him about my study and what I was doing, he was all in. So I said, you need to get to know us and become a partner. So he's got his blue stuff now and he's on board. So when I did the study, we created a t-shirt as a thank you for people that would participate. And on this t-shirt, it's a yellow t-shirt. I wanted it to stand out. Most people wear black and gray, and it has a light blue 53 Corvette. Why did we choose that? The 53 Corvette was the first sports car built in America, and it was built right here in Flint. Most people don't know that. They think it was built in Detroit. But it was an interesting story to tell people as we tried to get them to complete the survey. So here you see a couple kids completing the survey. And Sage, Donk Master, if anybody completed the survey, he would autograph the t-shirt for them and take a picture with them. So we leveraged his celebrity status to get data as well. So again, this is the interesting data that we found from the study. The first question I asked was, what was your attraction? Why did you come to the race? And then I wanted to know what their favorite subject in school was and what their career plans were. So I separated it by gender. 83% of our respondents were male. Most of them came because they like to watch racing. They wanted to see the influencers and they like cars. Those were their top three things, racing, cars, and influencers for the males. For the females, they came for racing, entertainment, and the cars. So they're a little bit more social. But then here's the interesting part. What is their favorite subject in school? 53.6% of the males said math. The next one was science. At right around science at 10.7, then history at 10%. You guys know, and I saw some, what is the biggest barrier to completion in engineering? Math. Cal 2, there we go. It's math, right? So if they like math, we're halfway there, but they may not know it. And so with the girls, their favorite, 44% said their favorite subject was math, and their next favorite subject was science. But here's where it gets tricky. I don't think this population understands what all they can do with the love of math. Because when we ask them, what do you plan to do for the career? Unsure was the top answer at 22%. No idea, weren't sure what they wanted to do. The next one was business or entrepreneurship. They may not know what kind of business or whatever. And then we had some random things like professional sports. Only about 33% said racing. A couple said truck driving, and unfortunately, engineering was down at 5.8, but the trades were at 13.9. And we know a lot of times we could be looking at tactile learners for the males. And then for the females, 23%, they had 18% unsure, but 23% said they wanted to do business. And then some of them want to do medical careers. And we know we can't do medical without math or science. So at this point, I'm not sure if the opportunities that go with the love of math or science is really clear in this population. So I think there's work for us to be done there. So I think these are important because we know how important math is to do anything in STEM. And this is also a contraindicator to what we often see when we look at standardized scores. If we look at standardized test scores, they typically tell you African Americans don't do well, or they're not interested in math or science. I wonder if it's the way we present it to them, is it the way we talk about it to them, is it the way they learn it? Because obviously they say they like it. So there's a disconnect somewhere here that is definitely opportunity to be explored. And then again, I come back to this population may be vastly unaware of the opportunities available to them if they have these likes, these interests, and how we can build on it. So there's some academic benefits to this research currently, even before we reach out to future generations to address their interests. Here you see Sage talking to some students in Maryland at a racetrack, talking about what he's done to the car. And he is explaining to them how when he went with this size tire, he had to modify the frame, the struts, everything to go with it, all the modifications that it takes to make a car go that fast and change the wheels and everything that goes with it. So definitely, again, understanding of some concepts that he may not use the same terms that we use in the classroom. So this was a community engaged project. We had a lot of other outputs from this. So we have some valuable data here on the often untapped area. We have relationships now with Motorsports professional. The Donk Master was the first one. While I was there, I also met his partner that was into motorcycles and women's empowerment, and that created another project. And then we gained some corporate partnerships through this as well, and some interdisciplinary collaborations. So if you think about our college as a founding member here and think about our T-shaped model, how does this align with what we're doing at CIT? Well, if you think about what we saw at the race, we saw some examples of some of the 21st century competencies that we know we need to address. We saw some innovation, we saw cultural awareness, we saw self-directed learning, the fact that you learn from people around you and your relatives. We saw managing complexity because there are a lot of things happening at once to make this race happening and to do the event planning. We saw communication and some reasoning. So we saw some of this on display, even though it may not be where we normally look for it. But also from this and the things we learned, we can use this in some of the classroom if we position projects that have some co-curricular experiences. Look at what's happening in the industry, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening in the racing industry. But it's some student-centered teaching as you learn from each other, and some work-based learning. So I think this type of research fits well within our college and our priorities. So motorcycles entered the study because we see a lot of them at these races, and there's also connections between the participants that are evident. I met Denise Markham, who has an organization for women that ride motorcycles and women that race. And she said Harley Davidson makes a bunch of cool ornamentation for motorcycles that guys like, but they don't make anything for women that ride motorcycles. And you know me, I said, oh, my students can do that. We have 3D printers. We have one that even prints metal. We can do that. And she said, really? So guess what? It became a class project. So in one of our classes, we started working on it. And that semester, the metal 3D printer was down. So the plastic ones you see are the early prototypes of what the students made. Then the next semester, I had a bunch of the same students in another class that was lean manufacturing and product improvement. So they took the plastic ones and made a better product. And that's where we see these motor tiaras. And these actually go on the gas caps on the motorcycles. So women that want ornamentation now can have that. So our students can say they've made some real products that could potentially go on a bike. She came in via Zoom, talked to the students so they were able to get the project requirements. They were able to share their thoughts, give details, and then they worked together in teams to develop these tiaras. So we had some scaffolded learning here, and there is an article in process about this too, about the scaffolded learning in the real world project. The other thing too, since I collected this data over 2 years, we had a student that wanted to do an independent study and do some more research on data engineering. So he was able to use this data to do some of that, and he tested out open source data versus open source software to analyze data versus some other software, and did his study on that. And that paper is under review now to be published. So on building these relationships, finally 2 years in, we got the Donk master coming back to the bricks. He showed up. And here's a picture of him with Dean Pearson and Denise. She's the one that sponsored the project on the tiaras. And so we have this theme now that racing is STEM in action. And thanks to Dean Pearson, we got a bunch of cool, things to wrap off the flat lot. And we had a fourth of the flat lot allocated to us because we've also formed a partnership now with Back to the Bricks. Back to the Bricks is seeking to get more young people involved in what they do, because most of the people that come to the Back to the Bricks are over 50, and they'd like to see more young people involved in the car culture. We also have other faculty members that come. So here you'll see Steve Turner from computer science, and he had questions about some of the sensors and how they collect data on the cars and stuff. So there's opportunity for other interdisciplinary projects too. This is Donna Case, and we work on this project where we modify ride-on cars for children with disabilities. She brought this car out, set up a tent. Several other families came through. We had people that donated cars so we could modify them for more children with disabilities. So now we have a little mini fleet going. So if you go over in the annex, you'll see cars there. You got cars in the white building. And then this is Caden, the first young man we modified the car for. And as you see here, he has his legs down. So he's growing up and he's part of Governor Whitmer's committee for children with disabilities. But he got to meet Sage Thomas, got to meet the Donk master and get in a really cool car. So that was fun for him. But this was good publicity for our other project as well. And this is the CHS and the CIT collaboration. Finally, this is Amber Amber and I, helped we raised the money together to pay the professional fees to get him here. And this is us on stage at Back to the Bricks. And he actually told the audience how he uses math and science to make his cars go faster and to win races. So, some audience impacts. This is our students here. We had rain off and on all day, but they volunteered. They got to connect to each other, connect to the community, and they got to learn more about racing, more about Back to the Bricks, more about the community. So since this study started in 2022, it took me a long time to collect the data, long time to get analysis, but productivity is coming. So I've had 3 conference presentations, I've had 2 invited talks, 2 conference papers, 1 journal article already published, 2 more that are under review, another 2 that are in process, and there have been a few newspaper articles written about this study in our illustrious institution here. So it became a natural evolution. What started with Donk racing, it went to that, then motorcycles, and then finally I started looking at other types of racing. So this is what I was used to seeing. When they say go to a race, this was what comes to mind. IndyCar, Indy 500. So of course we had to figure this out. So I spoke to one of my mentors one day and I was telling him about the study. And he says, of course I had to explain what dogs were. And I said, well, there's really, no other African Americans that run these teams. And he said, oh, well, yeah, I got a frat brother that does. I said, really? So he introduced me to Rod Reed. And so he owns Force Indy, which is an Indy race car team, traditional, and one of their sponsors is Roger Penske. But we hear now about other athletes and actors buying into teams, but as far as hands-on and actually running a team, he's the first and the only one to my knowledge. He also has a nonprofit called NXG, Next Gen Racing, where he uses racing concepts to teach what he calls street STEM, where he uses actual activities for students to learn about science and life skills. And he was at Back to the Bricks as well. So this is at the track, and I'm getting to see the difference between how they race and how Donks race. The difference in equipment, the difference in preparation, the rules, everything, totally different. It's all motorsports, but it's totally different. And a totally different budget. Now, this is what a typical crowd looks like at an IndyCar race. This is what a typical crowd looks like at a Donk race. Very different. So let's look at cost of admission. With the discount, this was a race in Illinois. The ticket to get in, and it was given to me, was $88 for one person. Here, at a Donk race, I paid $20 a person. So, thinking about taking a family of 4 to an event like this is where you got to think about accessibility. So for Formula One, your average ticket cost is going to be about $600. Parking is $75. Total expense for 24. Now this is no hot dogs, no Cokes, no popcorn, no t-shirt. We're talking about just get in and sit down. Park the car, get in and sit down. You're at over $2 grand. IndyCar, close to $1,000, $906. NASCAR, a little bit cheaper, but still expensive. Starting at $113 per ticket. $35 to park, family of 4, you're almost at $500. Go to a Donk race, big rim racing, average ticket is $20 to $25. Parking is about $10. If you do the VIP, it may be $20. But nevertheless, you can get a whole family of 4 there for right around $100. So you see how accessibility makes a difference, cost. So we know that we're going to see more families of lower SES, perhaps at a Donk race as well. Concurrently, there's some trends going on in motorsports. NASCAR and IndyCar have realized that their fan base is aging. Their average fan at the stands is over 55 years old. And they've been trying different things to get more people engaged. NASCAR, as you know, is hosting events in urban areas. They had a race downtown Chicago. They donated a lot of tickets to community centers like the Boys and Girls Club. IndyCar has their race downtown Detroit to get more urban influence in, more people engaged. NASCAR has actually partnered with the HBCU, a historically Black college, and they now have a motorsports major, and they're developing people to work in motorsports. There are a lot of jobs in motorsports that go unfilled. It's almost a hidden industry to a degree. So universities now are starting to develop more educational programs in motorsports and student clubs. Wayne State has a motorsports club. One of our students, Aaron Yang, volunteered with Rodney Reed and worked with his NXG group last summer. And he told us, well, you know, Wayne State. I said, we're gonna get one, just give us time. So anybody want to help me start a motorsports club, let me know. So cool thing is, Netflix had a movie called They Cloned Tyrone. They called on Sage Thomas to make a car. The end of the movie, the hero rides in with this car to save the day. And he built this car. So of course, when they start advertising the movie, one of the questions they asked him is, this is pretty cool, but what's your connection to the car culture? And he goes, oh, Miss Donaldson in Michigan. That's my connection to the car culture. So they called me from the Free Press and USA Today and said, can we interview you? So they came and they asked me about this study we've been doing, and they took pictures here on campus. They have pictures of our lab and the things we do here. And so this is a copy. Actually, one of my aunts in Louisville called me a few months later because it was in USA Today, it was in the Free Press automotive section, and then it hit the look. She was like, what are you doing? What's going on? So now they say the professor and the racer team up to boost STEM. So we're making this happen. This is Rodney Reed because of our connection. He came and spoke on campus, and he talked about his entrepreneurial journey. He is also an electrical engineer. And he talked about how he started out, how he got involved in racing. And he also runs a marketing business. He does a lot of the, what they call waymaking signs, which is the signage in airports. And as I told you before, he has NXG, his nonprofit, to help kids learn more about street science and life skills. So now we have a couple of corporate partners there, and they want to work with us as we develop more with motorsports and STEM. So this is what I call my motorsports collaborative. Now, the interesting thing was these two never met each other until I introduced them, because their sectors of racing are very different. Now, occasionally they may both go to SEMA or PRI, some of the other professional racing, but they're both so engaged. It's kind of like us. We may never meet somebody over in the White Building, you know, or in French Hall, depending on what we study. But they realize they are dealing with some of the same thing as high profile people in racing, building their teams, understanding their audience. And so we meet on a regular basis, and we're talking more about what we can do to use racing to help more youth understand the need for STEM and the potential opportunities. So think about these little guys here. So the implications here, we've studied some understudied population in a different space. It gives us a greater connection because we start talking about cars to people. A lot of the barriers go down, you got a common interest. And then we have some more knowledge about informal science, entrepreneurship, and career paths. We need to better understand how some of these young people are choosing their career paths, what they know, what they don't know, and even to a degree what their parents may not know. I'm involved in another study, Birth by Racial Equity in STEM, where we're talking to parents about how they help their kids get ready for careers in STEM. So for the future, I want to expand the original study. I did not collect data at the IndyCar or the NASCAR races that I would like to do that and see if there's any comparables. And then I also want to continue exploring this first from some different perspectives. So as I said, we're looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective. Want to do some deeper work from the manufacturing perspective because it's custom manufacturing, but it is causing growth in certain areas like the real upscale wheels that they put on there, turbos, racing equipment, things like that. And then ultimately, I'd like to do some interventionist type research and projects where we use these settings, these race settings, to engage young folks and families and let them know what their opportunities are. So thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions or comments.
Okay, first of all, sure, it was a great presentation. You look really great with the yellow shirts. I really like your picture. Like, as you know, I'm Veronica Song, like research development officer here, but now I'm asking the question, not the RDO, I'm a sports psychologist.
Oh,
So that's the area. So I was like, actually, like sitting here, like listening to your conversation, like I was shocked. Because I've been working a lot with the student athletes, we're working a lot of a life skill, like education, like parenting involvement, some like performance enhancement technique. But like, I'm just like, fascinated because, the perception, like from engineering, like, expertise is so much different. So I don't know, actually, I don't have a question, but like, I just want to share my feeling.
okay.
So, I
Thank
mean, just question like, what do you think that what is going to be difference between like kind of regular, like traditional student athletes versus like Donk racer, like youngest population, because there's going to be so many research about just traditional student athletes, but we never actually focus on this sport type at all.
Right, well, actually, that's something else. So, and I think I had in one of the slides, there's not much scholarly data on that.
Mhm.
So that was the other reason I really wanted to do this study. So in theory, I'm gonna be one of the first people to publish on Donk racing from a scholarly perspective. I had one paper I sent in and one of the reviewers said, well, your lit review could be a little bit more. And I was like, ma'am, there is none. But I'm
Nothing.
pulling things from, racing magazines or whatever, because there's not been any real studies, like you said, how do we compare like athletes that play football or golf to
Right.
sports drivers? I've not seen that.
Because usually at a sports psychology standpoint, we usually like using like pick the participant who play the sports and try to help them how could be their like better students or like improve their academic performance or just sport performance. But we never thought that like the sport itself can be the great resource of the learning. For example, like we can like actually teaching like science or engineering using their car.
Right.
So I was really fascinated, like, like sure, there's going to be so many places that we could talk more.
I'm open to that.
Well, this is a great motivation. So you are covering the informal learning technique. You also the outreach for the community. So we covered many aspects. So I'm interested more about the informal learning and how these guys, when they replace part of the component in the car, and then they see enhancement in aerodynamics, enhancement in the propulsion, and things like that. Did you talk to them like how they build this intuition? Like how they become?
Yeah, so when I talked to them, they said, and this is right along the theory of continuous improvement that we teach, but they don't use those words. So they'll say, I did this, they've seen that, I gotta make this better to beat him. So they understand what's out there and they understand, but all the words you just used, none of those. And so I'm not a linguist, but someone that is might want to work with me and say, okay, they describe it this way, but based on their actions, they obviously understand some other concepts. So that's another line of inquiry.
Competition theories.
Huh?
Competition theories.
Competition theory, yeah. But even like you said, with the vehicle modification, they do a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
So the way they do experimentation, I don't know what model they use. I would love to, again, another thing I could study. How do you, decide what you want to try next? How do you know when it's good enough? I mean, that's a study in itself. Yes, sir.
Something struck my mind
Okay.
when you really mentioned the interest those group of people we have in mathematics. I was saying a group of talents that didn't make it to the higher institution. Normally, traditionally, what you see in a group of people is people who are not very strong. You see more people that are not very strong in mathematics. That situation is different.
Exactly.
So if your research really encompass to dig more into why they didn't really go.
Well, that's future study. I'd have to go back and do, because they filled out a survey. And there was one question and I didn't go into that. That's another paper. But why are they choosing to go to college or not? Why are they gonna build on this? Preliminarily, they say the cost. That lets me know that they don't understand the different ways you could fund college. Because I'm part of another study where we're working with parents in racial equity and STEM, and there's a lot of misinformation about the cost of college, the benefit, and the ways to fund it. But I didn't get to delve deeply in that in this study, but that is something I'd like to do. Again, like this study could be expanded in so many different directions. But like you, it piqued my interest because I mean, who would have guessed the number would have been that high, right? And if they like it, and that's what they want to do, can we build on that? Can we encourage them to excel? Even to our level, you know, we need more scholars in math, right?
Thank you.
How about the data? Like, what is the sample number? Like, when you do the survey, like, how many people do you do?
So for this one, I had about 250 surveys completed. And it took a while. Like I said, it was times I got all the way there, spent time, money to go, and it got rained out. Well, learn something about material science, right? They're not gonna do this on the wet track. So, you know, because they're just like, no, we don't run on the wet track. And the one that was in Maryland, it rained all morning, but in the afternoon it cleared up. They dried the track, but most of the crowd had left. A lot of the crowd just didn't even show up because it was raining. They knew they weren't gonna run. The other thing too is that most of these races are in the South. So they're there all day. They're showing the cars, selling merchandise, interacting, but they don't really start racing to the evening because then the track is cooler. So like I said, they understand about material science. And when I hear them talk, like they'll talk about how they change their tires for different kind of tracks for different places. So that lets me know they understand some heat transfer. They understand a few things. They just don't use the words we use. That's what was so fascinating to me.
Hi, Dr. Dean. I know that you mentioned, obviously you started from scratch with this, study. And so for the future of Donk racing, at least maybe the next 5 to 10 years with the pace that you're at now, where do you see this going as it connects to education specifically?
Where I would like for it to go is that it becomes a conduit for us to connect to more youth that like Donk racing. Kind of like Dr. Luco was saying, if they like this, if we could talk to them and help them understand, you know, what's holding you back. You have this opportunity, you know. So I would like to use these type of events to really be able to do outreach, to do some more relationship building, to let some of these kids and their parents know, look, if your kid is interested in this, and this is what they want to do, we have a pathway for you. You know, of course, I need a pre and a post so I can get it funded, right? But I would like to see that happen. And the Donk Master was really interesting. Like I said, the show premiered, I think, in 2018. That promo was shot in 2017. Who knew we would be using it in something like this? And he has 5 kids. And so when I met him and told him what I was trying to do, he was like, yeah, okay, I want my kids to go to college. And so he was all in and all on board. So I know he would be helpful. Rodney Reed. And since then, I went to a Fox Tech event and of course to Detroit Auto Show, and I've met Julius Curry. Now, Julius Curry is a Michigan alum. He played football in Ann Arbor, went to the NFL for a while, and now he owns Curry Motorsports. And he has Formula One connections and connections with Lamborghini. He brought his family. In fact, his son and daughter will be touring campus in a couple of weeks. They're really interested in our esports as well, and he wants to partner with us. So within the next 5 years, we will have partnerships in several sectors of motorsports. So depending on what your area of interest is, we can look at it from different ways. There's different ways we can conduct research there. But we could definitely use this as entree into a community to show options and opportunities to people that may not recognize they're available.
I'm gonna say it right now. You need to start branding you as the Donk. Right? Say it right there. So I have to disagree a little bit with what Yasser said. This isn't just perfect. This is brilliant that you've identified the avenue of research here and identified this group of people that are severely underrepresented. And you're finding ways to engage them. And this is fantastic. Have you collaborated with anybody in sociology to ask, you know, some of these sociological questions about, you know, how do we attract people in the sector? How do we retain people in the sector? What are the challenges?
Well, like I said, I'm working with Jennifer Lacoste in EdSite.
Yeah.
And we're working on racial equity in STEM. And we also have a parent study going where we're actually talking to the parents about what do you know about STEM education? How do you prepare your children? What do you know to prepare them for their careers? So I'm working with her on that separate study. So, but yeah, I think this could be phenomenal. I also, and this may sound crazy, I was also thinking, given what we watched and how they talk, is there a way we could use some language techniques to better connect and how we explain things to certain young people with different backgrounds to get them more engaged, like, you know, so aerodynamics may scare them. But when we talked about making them go faster, because if you notice, that car is a convertible. When he races it, you know, the top is down. So they're doing all types of stuff to improve performance. They don't use the language we use because they have not had the same kind of training we had. So how do we merge those two together? So you're exactly right. Those are lines of inquiry. And I mean, I guess this could keep me busy, what, the next 10 years, right? But I think it's been really
Maybe
interesting.
longer for administration.
Pardon me?
Maybe longer for federal administration. That's what I said.
But yeah, I think it does open a lot of opportunities. So like when I first started, I didn't talk about it a lot. I mean, I talked to people who knew me, but I wanted to be the first one to get the publications out there so I could be foundational in this area. So I had to have a little strategy here. And it took me a while, but it's come. So now I'm really seeing the benefit. And like I said, you know, I haven't compared it with data from NASCAR fans or IndyCar fans. I don't know what their likes are, what their career trajectories are. So there's a lot that could be done there, but definitely within this population, yeah, I can see where we can make major inroads. And when he was at Back to the Bricks, anytime he revved the engine, people just swarmed us. And so we were able to get a mailing list. We had people sign in, give them yellow shirts. So now we got people we can reach out to when we're having our summer camps, you know, families and kids. So it's definitely a drawing card.
Any other questions? No. Let's thank Shirl for